Welcome back to the So Many Roads podcast. I'm recording this from London on a bit of a solo mission that turned into something more meaningful than I expected. Originally, I was planning to see Bob Weir and the Wolf Bros at the Royal Albert Hall with my good friend Jeremy, who's originally from the UK. But unfortunately, he had to bail at the last minute for personal reasons. So I found myself here alone with a ticket in hand, a couple of free days, and a head full of ideas. So I decided to chase a few ghosts. Here's part one of what I found when I poked around. London's no stranger to musical legends, but I wanted to follow the Dead's particular shadow across the city. I started my walking tour in Camden Town at the old Roundhouse. If you've never seen it, it's a big circular building just a few minutes walk from the Camden Tube station. Originally built in the 1800s to turn locomotives around, back when trains were short enough to actually fit inside a roundhouse. Although that didn't last long, and after years of being used as a storage facility, it eventually became an arts venue in the mid-1960s. Pink Floyd played there in October 1966 at an all-night psychedelic rave. There's actually a little footage of it on YouTube. And on the years that followed, the Roundhouse hosted a who's who of rock royalty: Hendrix, the Stones, Bowie, Led Zeppelin. It became kind of an epicenter for experimental and rock music in London. Now, here's the Dead connection. In October of 1968, the Grateful Dead were supposed to play 2 nights there, October 11th and 12th, as part of a short European run. They'd already been booked at the Revolution Club the night before in downtown London, but that whole mini tour got canceled. No one really knows exactly why. Some say it had to do with the band blowing past their recording budget in September while they were recording their 3rd album that's really hard to pronounce. Others speculate it might have been the internal tensions at the time, when they were considering letting go Pigpen and Bobby. Either way, it's a little slice of alternative history, a Dead show that never happened, in a venue dripping with psychedelic lore. 2 West Coast American bands that did make it to the Roundhouse around that time were The Doors and Jefferson Airplane. One can only wonder, was the Dead supposed to join them? As the 70s rolled on, the Roundhouse morphed again, this time becoming one of punk's proving grounds. Bands like the Ramones, The Clash, and The Damned all played there. And just a stone's throw away, a venue called Dingwalls was where a lot of English punk legends got their reputation. Outside of Dingwalls was where one of London's most legendary music fights occurred, one that included members of the Ramones, The Clash, and the Sex Pistols. Late 1970s Camden became this epicenter of raw sound and rebellion, and the streets still carry some of that grit if you're paying attention. Right in the heart of Camden is the sprawling market. Touristy as hell now, but still bursting with some weird corners and artistic energy. The Clash shot their first album cover there, standing against that graffitied wall, looking like they just stepped out of a fight and into a revolution. How could I resist taking a selfie where they stood? They also rehearsed a few steps away in a warehouse they called Rehearsals, which is now, of all things, a rave clothing store called Cyberdog. It's futuristic and neon and absurd, but weirdly fitting for Camden. Around the same time, Camden also sparked a rude boy ska scene highlighted by bands like The Madness. Once again, Camden became the center of British music in the early 2000s, exemplified by the bronze statue of Amy Winehouse tucked inside the market. She grew up not far from here and gravitated towards Camden because of its bohemian spirit. And while the place has changed a lot, you can still feel those traces. Street art covers alleys, vintage shops spill out onto the sidewalk, people in funky attire mixed into the crowds of tourists, and honestly, a surprising number of women who kind of look like Amy Winehouse. Big hair, eyeliner, ripped jean shorts. It's like the vibe she carried never really left. I had lunch at one of her old haunts, a pub called the Howley Arms. The walls are plastered with music memorabilia, photos, posters, signatures. It feels lived in, almost like it's waiting for the next chapter of history to walk through the door. And as you walk back towards the main drag, Camden High Street, you'll pass the Electric Ballroom, another legendary venue that's still going strong. Everyone from U2, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Public Enemy, and The Killers have played there. Even though its surroundings are now incredibly crowded and very tacky, the remnants of a Camden scene are still alive there today. From Camden, I headed southwest towards a much more important hall in the world of Deadhead lore, the Lyceum Theatre. It was late May 1972 when the Grateful Dead played 4 legendary shows here, closing out their Europe 72 tour with a run that would become immortalized on tape and for many of us on vinyl. The version of Morning Dew from that final night, May 26th, is a highlight. That was the song that first cracked something open for many of us. It felt like grief and grace and the end of the world all rolled into one. So naturally, I had to see the place with my own eyes. I signed up for a public tour of the Lyceum. To be fair, this was a theater lover's tour, not a Deadhead pilgrimage. Most of the crowd was there because the Lion King had been playing the Lyceum for over 25 years, which is kind of wild in its own right, but honestly, I couldn't care less about Simba. I was there to see where Jerry stood. We were told not to take any photos of the stage, but come on, man, how could I resist? That's where the Dead stood. That's where Phil dropped bombs, where Bobby snarled through El Paso, where Donna gave us those haunting harmonies. It felt like being at the foot of something sacred, and they expected me not to take pictures. But what really made the tour special was getting to go through the stage door through the alley in the back, just like the band would have, and see the backstage area through those narrow halls, passing what would have been their dressing rooms. And then we were led up to the balcony and eventually down onto the main floor. I sat in both places, just quietly soaking it in. The air had that old theater stillness to it. It wasn't nearly as ornate as I expected. It was actually kind of dark and heavy in there. Perhaps that's why the Morning Dew was so good. This room was where the Dead were still in their prime. Tight from the tour, playful, cosmic. The room is almost too refined for the scruffy American band that showed up in May 1972. But somehow, they made it their own. There's one spot I meant to visit on this trip but didn't quite make it, Alexandra Palace, or as the locals call it, Alley Pally. It's perched on a hill in North London with sweeping views of the city, and in early September 1974, the Grateful Dead played 3 nights there. These were the final European shows before they took a hiatus from touring, and they brought the full wall of sound with them, because of course they did. I reached out to the folks at the Alexandra Palace before my trip, hoping maybe I could get a peek inside the theater. But I never heard back, and honestly, it's a bit of a hike from central London. I didn't want to make the journey all the way up there just to stare at a locked door. So I let it go. Instead, I watched some grainy footage online of the wall of sound being set up at the Alley Pally when I got to my hotel room after visiting the Lyceum. But what I didn't know is that in a few short hours, I would meet someone who was at those shows, and he shared with me how the room sounded those nights. But we'll get to that in another episode. Another venue I did see, at least from the outside, was the Rainbow Theatre in Finsbury Park. It's right there when you step out of the tube station. The Dead played there twice in 1981, once in March and once in October. These shows aren't talked about as much as their other London shows, mostly because the recordings weren't that great. But you could imagine what went down. That early Brent-era energy, tight and funky, songs like Althea, Feel Like a Stranger, and Shakedown Street, all coming into their own. A few weeks before the trip, I'd posted in a UK Deadhead Facebook group, just letting folks know what I was up to with the podcast. Almost immediately, someone replied, "You have to come Friday night to the pre-show in Brixton. The Grateful Dudes are playing, the best Dead cover band in the UK." That was all I needed to hear. It was one of those unusually hot days in London, and as I rode the bus to Brixton, sweating, tired, sticking to the seat, I actually started to regret leaving the comfort of my hotel air conditioning. But the second I stepped off the bus across from the pub, it all shifted. This guy in a vest with a big beard and a pork pie hat walked up to me, rolling his own cigarette, and said, "Hey man, you're the American dude with the podcast, right?" And just like that, I knew I was in the right place. Inside, the energy was exactly what you'd hoped for. People of all ages, some in tie-dyes, a few with dreadlocks, all of them smiling, just psyched to have a Dead-adjacent show in their city. The band had their own posters and t-shirts, and a couple of old heads were handing out old bootleg tapes for free. It felt like the real deal. I talked to a bunch of folks that night, though most of the recordings didn't survive due to the background noise. I did manage to save a snippet from Dave. He's from Amsterdam by way of New York, and he was talking about how he found the Dead, and how we all also carry a few musical regrets.
The Dead was always there, kind of a thing. Also, it was always in the background. I was more of a Doobie Brothers fan. Rang. No, definitely not. It was just in the air. It was my friend's older brother. It was summer camp. Some dude showed up playing Casey Jones. Camp Sloan, YMCA, Connecticut.
All right.
Small world, man. Here we are. Yeah, and then I got bit in like 85, 84, 85. And that's when I started going to shows and really touring and doing all that stuff. And that was like just before Jerry's coma.
Yeah.
So that was like the last of that era.
Yeah, I was going to say, so you probably saw like that last bit before they got really popular with Dr. Gray.
Correct.
Unfortunately, that's like the same time I got into the Dead. I was fairly young, though. I'm 51. So I didn't really get around to seeing the Dead till the very end. I had some chances and I didn't do it. In the early 90s, I had my chances. So I was lucky enough to see him, which not everybody can say.
You didn't miss it. You got on the bus just in time.
Yeah. I mean, I was listening, but I didn't go to shows till later. So that's my one big regret.
Like some whole bunch of people here. Everybody's got regrets. Man, I had an offer to see Stevie Ray Vaughan, one of his last concerts.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, it's LA. Oh, he'll be back next year.
That's kind of why I'm here, Dave, is because you only live once. And it's like, I've been to London before. I hadn't gone to Royal Albert Hall.
I've never been.
My brother did. And like after he went on the same trip, I was with him. I didn't go. And I was like, man, I should have gone. So come back and do it when Bobby's here.
I also tried to interview Casey from Montana and JoJo from California, two hardcore fans who travel for Dead-related shows, apparently even across the Atlantic. Right as we started talking, the band kicked into soundcheck, so I only got a tiny bit of audio. But in this short clip, you'll hear them say something that I think a lot of us can relate to.
What about your other Dead experiences? So if you're going to London to see Bobby, I assume you travel a lot to see shows?
As much as we can. In fact, what I like is that now at my age, versus back in the 90s, we can actually, we figured it out to a certain extent now, and we know how to travel, we know how to do it on the road, and
How to spend your money wisely.
we can afford more things, So,
Yes.
Like for example, I was able to get a time lodge occasionally after a Sphere show. But we were there every weekend of the Sphere this last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We went to Mexico in February for playing in the town.
Not long after, the Grateful Dudes took the stage, and the room just exploded. It was packed from the start, and it only got more crowded. Almost everyone was dancing, and the band brought real energy and heart to the set. Some highlights for me: a fiery Jack-A-Row. And the whole crowd going wild for I Know You Rider. And in classic Deadhead fashion, the night kept delivering little synchronicities. During set break, I was heading to the bathroom when a woman stopped me and said, "Hey, I like your fish shirt." Then she pointed to her husband across the room and said, "He's got a fish hat on. You guys should talk." This is how I met Mike and Taylor. Turns out they do some jam band social media stuff. They live in Portugal. And this floored me. They hang out with a retired Deadhead couple who moved there from New Haven, Connecticut, my hometown. It really is a small world. I'd end up seeing them again the next night at the Royal Albert Hall. But the moment that really stuck with me was when I finally met Peter Williams, the guy everyone said I had to find. He's the keeper of the flame for the UK Dead scene, someone who was at almost all the legendary London shows. We agreed to meet up again the next night at the Bobby Weir and Wolf Bros concert. And I'm so glad we did. But that's a story coming in the next episode from the Royal Albert Hall. For now, I'll let the Grateful Dudes play us out with a little taste of their version of Not Fade Away. Thanks for joining me on the So Many Roads podcast. I'm your host, Pete Booley. Dave Steinman is our show's technical director. Theme music by Sawyer Booley. Original artwork by Ashley Hodson. You can find us on YouTube, Meta, at our website, somanyroadspodcast.buzzsprout.com. If you have a unique story or perspective to share, feel free to make a comment on any platform or hit me up at somanyroadspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time, let's keep the journey going.